We're back here on Jacket Sports Weekly for another episode about Jacket Athletics.
Jacket Sports Weekly, where you can find everything Waynesburg University sports. Tune in every week to our panel as they take a deep dive into Waynesburg sports. We cover everything from football.
Turning around is Isaac Trout. Did he get the feet down? We will wait for the mark. And they call it a touchdown.
To basketball.
Ball. Got it! We're all tied up!
To softball.
Max this one. Left field. Kiss it goodbye.
Stay up to date with all your favorite Waynesburg University sports with us at Jacket Sports Weekly.
Welcome back for an episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. Still your usual two suspects up here, Logan Lepiscopo and Seth Adams. Sir, great to be back. Another week of Jacket Athletics.
Yes. A lot of happiness and a lot of sadness.
It's good to have a good mix. Not everybody can be so great, but let's first talk about the wrestling. Okay, dropping pens. All right, wrestling. We're not going to talk about that. Let's talk about the duels that Waynesburg just had. They had two conference duels just real quick. Dropped to W&J, dropped to Teal. I think that's going to happen when you don't weigh in at 3 weight classes.
Yeah, they had the chance against Teal. That was their shot. They were able to get ahead. Jesse Orban, Seth Evans, Cole Hammett, Colby Morse didn't even wrestle. He won in forfeit, but they came so close. It was. Excuse me, they were only down by a little bit, but they lost to a forfeit, and then they lost another match, and then it just ended up. It wasn't even that they just got outplayed. It was just the unfortunate event that a forfeit happened, which caused them to secure a loss in that match against Teal.
Yeah, now they moved down to 0-3 in the conference since they played St. Vincent earlier in their season. Now let's move over to the hoops side of things. That's really getting down to the wire. Final 6 games coming up here. Let's talk about the women's team first. Since we shot our last episode, they've had 3 games and unfortunately dropped all 3 of those.
Yeah, a loss to Worcester, a loss to W&J, and a loss to St. Vincent. Let's talk about the St. Vincent one. Losing 70-58. Friday had 14 points. Tori had 11. Jules only had 6, but she had 12 rebounds. But they were good. First quarter ended. It was 19-17. Yeah, they're in it. Next quarter, they get outscored 17-6, and they just can't catch up. They get to a point where they get so far behind. We talk about it relentlessly on the show, how they always fall that one quarter, and they were consistent with them the whole rest of the game. It was just that one quarter that they just cannot figure out how to stay consistent throughout the whole game, and it causes them. They lost by 12. Well, they let up 11 in that one. They got down 11. Even if they were down by 1, it's just detrimental.
Usually we see it's the third quarter. This time the second quarter. We'll get a little bit more in depth with that one with Ethan Spazarski, our analyst for women's basketball. Now over to the men's side of things. They were on the road the past 2 games. They had 1 win, 1 loss, a humbling win over the St. Vincent Bearcats.
Yeah, but, we have to address it, A tough loss to, that school.
That's school a little bit up north.
Maybe we took it a little too far, all right? Maybe. But there were 80 free throws in this game. 52 of them by Washington and Jefferson, and they made 39 of the 52, which that's such a big game changer. We were in foul trouble the whole entire time. We basically shot ourselves in the foot, but Baker had 24, McCloyd had 18, Davis had 16, but the bench really didn't do too much either. It was really those 3 guys who did all the scoring for Waynesburg during that game, but those fouls, that's insanity. I remember watching it and thinking, how is this even possible?
It's like the whistle just never left the ref's mouth.
No.
Not at all during that game. And like you said, tough loss, but then you go in, you beat St. Vincent on their home court after they beat us here at the Rudy. So that's a big plus for this 2 games that we've been away for. But now they have Geneva coming up tomorrow. By the time everyone's seeing this, it'll be tomorrow. Geneva, first place team, 14-1 in the conference. It's going to be a tough task, but I think they can bounce back. They lost by 10 last time. We'll see.
Very low scoring game, but
58-48.
Yeah, but I feel like they just took down St. Vincent was at the top 2, and they just took them down at their place. They can do anything they want to as long as they put their mind to it.
I love the positivity today. Spencer Terry will be the one to sit down with us and talk about that men's basketball team. Last but not least, our indoor track and field teams, both the men's and women's, they had a meet at Muskingum. Seth, talk a little bit about this women's team that competed.
Yeah, the women's team, the distance relay, which had Ella Booth, Gabby Riefensnyder, Lily Ryer, and Grace Tanksley. They all combined finished first. Ella Rochelle finished 8th in the triple jump, and Rebecca Miller placed 7th in the shot put.
And then on the men's side of things, got a lot to mention. Quentin Weaver broke a 15-year-old program record in the 1,000-meter run that he had with a time of 2 minutes, 35 seconds, and a couple decimals that I'm not going to get into. Isaiah Matthews is now not only 1, 2, 3, and 4, but 5 in the record books for the 60-meter run. And then you have the freshman, Jacob Harker. He's already got his name into the record book, just his second meet with Waynesburg, and he's now top 3 in shot put all time in terms of throws with a 14.19 meter throw. And from what I heard, that's a 3-meter personal best. So lot to look forward to when it comes to this track and field team.
Yeah, it's super exciting, and a lot of people are, just getting into it now. It's a little bit early, so as it goes on, things will get better as always.
PAC Championships coming up in just a few weeks, but we're going to head over to wrestling, who also has their PAC Championships coming up with Luke Andrusic. Welcome in for our first segment here on Jacket Sports Weekly. Got to talk about the wrestling team that just had 2 duels against PAC opponents Washington, Jefferson, and Teal. But first, let's introduce our analyst, Luke Andrusic, his JSW debut. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Great to be here.
All right, let's talk about this
Good
wrestling team. So, 2 duels that they had, as I mentioned, Washington, Jefferson, and Teal. You don't weigh in at 3 weight classes, 125, 133, or heavyweight. How much does that really impact the outcome of these duels?
I mean, we really wrestled terribly against Washington and Jefferson, I'd say. The Teal matchup is really what screws you there. I mean, they were leading the matchup going into the final duel, and we had to forfeit it because we didn't have someone weigh in at that weight class, which gave Teal the win. So not weighing in at 3 spots gives teams other free wins. If you wrestle that match, you could go in and win right there. You win the whole duel. So, I mean, it's huge.
In close game, it was 26-22. I mean,
exactly.
those are game-changing moments that really just change. You said change the whole outcome of the game and ruin everything. But were there any? Let's just talk about maybe some of the positives. We're positive on this show. What are some of the positives that you take away from Washington Jefferson or that Teal duel?
Like I said, they were going into that last match. They had the lead. And then having to forfeit that last match because they didn't have someone weigh in at the weight class, they had to forfeit that match and ultimately gave Teal the win over Waynesburg. But some of the bright spots I think that have happened this year, and I got the opportunity to talk to Seth Evans, Yellow Jacket. He said, well, here's some records for you. Colby Morris is 31-1 on the year. Jesse Orban, freshman, 25-10. Seth Evans himself is 11-13. Probably not as good as he would like, but pretty good still compared to some of the wrestlers on the team. Josh Kuslok is at 7-1 for the little he has wrestled. Has a great record, and Cole Homett is 9-1 as well. So those are some big standouts. Seth said that he knew Colby and Cole would do that because he's seen them wrestle before, and he said that Jesse, what he's doing, being 25-10 with little to no preseason as a freshman, is immaculate.
So we talk about the bright spots. Everybody knows the names you just mentioned. Let's look forward. They have the John Suma Invitational at Baldwin and Wallace, and they're going to have a lot of strong competition at this invitational. You have Brockport University from New York, a couple PAC schools that we see, Case Western Reserve. You have Teal that's going to be there. What should the fans out there for Waynesburg Wrestling expect? Should we expect just Colby and Jesse to do what they do, or maybe somebody steps up here?
Yeah, no offense to any of the other wrestlers on the team, but the guys that I mentioned, expect them to, wrestle well. Maybe not win, but, make it a close duel. But what we're looking at right now, we're 1-18 overall in the season, an 0-3 in conference record with some PAC teams at this meet. And, there's some big schools that you've heard of, It's being hosted by Baldwin-Wallace University out in near Cleveland, Ohio. I was looking back at the results. We have not beat Baldwin-Wallace since 2009. And we've wrestled them 6 times, I believe, since then. So it's going to be tough, but, expect Morris and Orban to take a win. These other guys, Seth, Josh, and Cole, they'll wrestle good matches. But other than that, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So you don't think that any of the matches coming up that they're going to be playing against all these schools that Logan listed, do you think they have any chance at all at maybe snagging another team win? Or do you think it's at this point where it's more individual than team?
I feel like they're coming off their best performance of the year against Teal. Not winning, but they were winning. And they lost by, forfeit. So they're coming off they won 5 of their 7 duels that they wrestled in, which is obviously the majority. They have a chance. It's sports. Like sports, anything can happen. But right now, I believe that the guys, it's really an individual thing. Like Seth told me that the people who care are the ones that are still here and working hard every day, and they have a head down and keep pushing mentality every day in practice. So I think it's really an individual thing at this point.
And we talked about the missing wrestlers at those 3 weight classes. You have the PAC championships coming up in just a few weeks. How important would it be for this team? You're going to see Washington Jefferson again, and you're going to see Teal again. How important is it to get these guys healthy, or just maybe somehow, some way find somebody to wrestle at these lower weight classes when it comes to that championship time?
Yeah, speaking of Teal and W&J, they were the co-champions last year of the PAC championships. As I'll explain, the PAC championships are an individual tournament, and the winner is determined by total team points accumulated. So there's a winner of each weight class, and you get points depending on if your wrestler at your certain school wins that weight class. So like last year, Colby Morris won the 174-pound bracket, which gave Waynesburg a point, or gave them points towards the final score. But W&J and Teal had every other wrestler winning their weight classes. So it's going to be important because if you have it's really difficult because if you're just throwing in a guy that doesn't really wrestle at that weight or like isn't good enough to wrestle for like the PAC championships, it's really a throwaway at that point because it's not like, I don't know how to explain it really, but you losing there really doesn't do anything. If it's either you forfeit or you have a really bad guy wrestling in that spot, what's really the difference? But expect Colby Morris to go off again. He might win 174 again. He's been really good. So we'll see.
Well, we'll see. Thank you, Luke, so much for joining us on the panel today. But don't go anywhere. We're going to be having some more hoops as we've had all semester long with Ethan Spazarski to come on and talk about some women's hoops.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. We're going to be talking about some hoops now, and you know the move. Woo! Ethan Spazarski. Great catch. Talk about some women's hoops for us, Sparky. Not so great last couple of games. Kind of just give us a recap of what happened in those last couple.
All right, last 3. The women have dropped their last 3 after defeating Bethany in what was probably arguably the best game of the season, or what at least looked like the most complete game of the season. 3 straight losses. The first one to Worcester, which is out in Ohio. This was a non-conference matchup. Really doesn't affect anything However, they did drop 2 straight conference games, one to W&J at their place and then also at Latrobe to take on the Bearcats. The Bearcats loss, though, was, in my opinion, the more devastating loss, or what hurt more to watch because of what was going on. In the Dub-J matchup, you could definitely see there was effort throughout the entire matchup. They may not have been leading or scoring or just at all really competing with Dub-J because they are, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best team in the PAC in women's basketball. But against St. Vincent, this stat, which blows my mind, in the second quarter, they only had a singular field goal made. They only made 1 shot in the second quarter, which is something you don't want to see. And in the second half, there just didn't look like there was any energy towards it. So it hurts to see. However, it's kind of beating a dead horse at this point, but I'll say it again and beat the horse again. They're going in the right direction. It's just taking its time. And that singular quarter where they struggle, which has been scattered out throughout the year, is definitely hurting.
So you talked about the lackluster second quarter in that St. Vincent game. Waynesburg, in those odd-numbered quarters, the first and third quarter, was up on St. Vincent, 35-31. They outscored St. Vincent in those quarters. But then you look at that second and fourth, as you mentioned, just that one basket made, outscored 39-23 in that second and fourth quarter against St. Vincent. So how can this team, Ethan, really figure things out and start to perform from start to finish, first, second, third, and fourth quarter?
Well, I mean, we can't even use the excuse that the women aren't leading at certain times because, believe it or not, they were leading after the first quarter against the Bearcats. They were at it. The first, as you mentioned, the first, third, and fourth quarter of this game, the women had 52 total points, and they were competing with St. Vincent for the most part. But in the second quarter, only 6 points. So, to me, you need a full game effort, and we've been saying it over and over and over and over again. But how much was it really going to affect? Because they haven't been able to win some of these games that they really do need to win. Nonetheless, if they're able to make more, I think more of their shots, which kind of sounds silly, it's going to help them win matchups because some of the times they're throwing up certain, I'll say it, they're throwing up shots that just don't look right, don't look like their normal selves, kind of awkward positioning. But I will say the thing I did like a lot, especially with St. Vincent, was the rebounding. There was a sequence where they rebounded 4 straight rebounds before they would go and make their shot. So, I mean, I think being consistent helps make your shots. And, I mean, don't put yourself in awkward positions. Don't be afraid to pass the ball. Sometimes it's quick, hurried, or rush, especially when they're starting to fall down. They start just to take any shot they want. So, I think just those multiple little keys are really going to help the women's team win.
Now, they're coming up against Geneva on Wednesday. Last time that we played Geneva, it was a pretty good game, well, only losing by a few or so points. But what can Waynesburg do in this matchup to keep it close like they did last time and maybe get that edge to get the win?
More consistency from everybody, and I think it all starts especially down low. I have to say, watching Jules Moorbacher and Kayla Howard work down low and really get involved is awesome. I said it on the pregame show when we played host to Washington Jefferson the first time at the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse. Give Jules a paintbrush. You know what? Give her a palette too. Give Kayla a couple paintbrushes as well, because when they're in there, it's like Mr. Miyagi. They're painting. They are working. But in all seriousness, they are really doing good inside, getting those rebounds, taking it up, also collecting some fouls as well. If you're able to stop Geneva's star players, their supporting cast isn't as good as some others in the PAC. So if you hold Geneva's stars down, or at least limit them to not all the points, I really do think Waynesburg could win this game. They came back down 10+ against Geneva before. They can do it again. So I think Waynesburg, if they are able to do that and continue to feed the ball to Kayla and Jules, that's really going to help them.
And you make a great point, because if you look at those last 3 games that Waynesburg has played, their best shooting performance from behind the three-point arc was 24%. And while you may think, 24%, 1 for 4. Yeah, 6 for 25 in their best game across the last 3 shooting from behind that three-point arc. So why is Waynesburg, having that success in the paint, but seems like continuing to try and live and die by the 3 ball?
Well, it's kind of hard because some of our 3-point producers, like Kara McFadden and Mia Hankins, for Kara was hurt. She was out with an injury, so she wasn't able to be out there to put up some 3s. She has some pretty nice 3 shots that she puts up. With Mia, I think it's still adjusting. Back in high school, she was a more 3-point shooter. I call her Dame Lillard when I talk to her because she'll put up a 3 anywhere she wants. But I think still adjusting to the period. You'd obviously like it to be sooner rather than later, but I think if she's able to get herself in that confidence, she starts knocking these threes down, it's going to fall more consistently and look really good. Right now, the best three-point shooter is, Calista Friday, I'd say arguably has been MVP of especially the second half of the year, arguably overall, and she's doing that as a freshman. She's shooting 41% from outside the arc by herself, 35%, from the field in general. I think that's really important also, is to rely on your people that you know can hit the certain shots, but also be confident in what you're doing. I really think that's pretty much it towards it, but just once they start getting a rhythm, knock down that wall, I really do think it'll help them.
So they have about 6 games left to go. You know, it's been, once again, a rebuilding year for the Lady Jackets. So how do you want this team, or what do you think this team, how should this team finish out for the year? Like, how do you think they should go about it? Should they just give it their all? What do you think about that?
Well, I say this to a lot of people I know. The best, if you give anybody who you're working for, your boss, your friends, if you give your best effort towards anything, that's all anybody can ask of you. You can give them 100%, 110%. What you give at your best is what you're going to give. But for these, well, now women, not girls, women, I think for them, just have fun with it. Give it your all. Continue to do what you're doing. Clearly, while it's not the leaps and bounds you want to see from year to year, and it's not possible, especially in these conditions when you're playing really good teams like Washington and Jefferson and Chatham, I think continuing to just work with what you've been working with. They've clearly been better all year. Statistically, from last year to this year, this is a completely different team. They've doubled their win total. They look a lot better. The margins are going down. It's going in the right direction. Sam Jones is putting together a really good team here. I think if they can continue to do what they've been doing, just with confidence and being happy to be out there and play as a team, they'll be able to do it. I've talked to some of the girls whenever they're playing, or whenever they're when I'm interviewing them for the Yellow Jackets stuff. They thoroughly love each other. This is a really tight-knit group, is what you really like to see. So they continue to just contribute in that aspect as well off the court. I do think that's going to help them in the future.
Well, Ethan, thank you very much for joining us up here talking about this Lady Jays team. When we come back, we'll sit down with Spencer Fratteri to talk about the men's side of things here on Jacket Sports Weekly. For our final segment here on Jacket Sports Weekly, we already talked about wrestling, women's basketball. That only leaves one option left, and that is the men's basketball team. Today, joined by Spencer Fratteri. Welcome.
Thank
First
you,
time
guys.
on the show for a long time. Since the football season. It's been a minute.
It's been a long time.
But you haven't changed the outfit. Still the same gray polo. Go back, watch it. He hasn't changed since. Let's talk about the games we've had. St. Vincent, W&J. Why are you laughing, Seth? You can do all these hoop things. I can't make jokes about him.
I am ready to learn about basketball.
We're going to be positive about basketball.
Positivity.
You lost to W&J. You beat St. Vincent, but you got foul happy in those two games. 36 fouls and 25 fouls. How can Waynesburg kind of clean that up moving forward?
Yeah, it's definitely something they have to work on. And again, the W&J game was interesting. In my 17, 18 years of watching basketball, I've never seen a game with so many fouls. But the whistle was blowing, and that's just something you have to deal with. I think the positive thing was to go look at that St. Vincent game, and that Jansen not switch onto Jaden Gales was crucial to them winning that game. Gales was killing Baker and Davis down low in the foul trouble, and they got into early foul trouble, and then that switch, Knott's locked down. He played great defense, and he really avoided the fouls. But again, when the whistles are blowing, there's nothing much as a player you can do about it. You have to just sit there, you have to take it, and you have to make changes, and that's what they did in the St. Vincent game. The WJ game was a little bit different, but like I said, in that St. Vincent game, they made a lot of defensive changes that worked out in their favor.
So St. Vincent, one of the best in the PAC. President's Athletic Conference, all right? They're up there. And Waynesburg goes into their house, beats them, and competes very well. We've seen the potential of this team, but we're still at that 500 record, 7-7 in the conference, 10-9 overall. We've seen what they can do. What can they do to stay consistent and be like Geneva and St. Vincent at that top of the conference?
Yeah, guys, listen, this might sound crazy to say, but I think we're right there with Chatham, Geneva, and St. Vincent. I don't think it's far off to say. And let me just also tell you, we only lost to St. Vincent by 3 at home. We beat them at their place. Waynesburg, I think, in the PAC has looked the best against St. Vincent of all the other teams. And let me just remind you, I think St. Vincent, while Geneva is one game ahead of St. Vincent now, I think St. Vincent is clearly a better team. I'm not discrediting Trevor Tipton and what he's done with that Geneva team, especially with the exit of Lyle Tipton. But, I mean, in terms of the top 2 teams all season being Geneva and St. Vincent, Waynesburg is right there with them. And you mentioned it. There's a lot of potential on this team. If they can, come together for these last 6 games, a playoff run could be in store.
And you mentioned the name Jansen Knotts when referring to that St. Vincent game. He kind of brought a spark that we hadn't seen all season long. It's been a very down season for the senior, but in this game, he really turned things around, really stepped up, scored 19 points, and usually we're used to seeing Anton Baker, Jalen Davis. How important is it in this final stretch, 6 games left in the regular season, for Jansen Knotts to now be getting that confidence?
Well, look, guys, I promise no ranting to the producer, and I'm not going to, but it's no secret that Jansen Knotts has not been himself. We'll put it that way. He's not the guy we saw last year. And again, Corey Mitchum is here, Jalen Davis is here, PJ Suggs, Jordan McCoy. There's a lot of new faces, so his role isn't what it used to be last year. But boy, did he have a coming out game against St. Vincent, and he needed 19 points. He also added out 5 rebounds, 6 assists. He was crucial in locking down Jaden Gills at the end of the game. He was a big part of that win. But that can't just disappear. Like we said all year, this team can't rely on Anton Baker to score 30 every night. I mean, it's just not realistic. And we've seen the struggles with Jordan McCloyd and his inconsistency, But if Jansen Knotts can keep playing at this level, not even 19 points a game, if he can contribute 10, 12 a game, and you get Anton Baker's 20 a game and Jalen Davis with his insertion into the lineup, this team could be set for quite a long run.
Now, they got another huge game coming up. Geneva, at Geneva, had one of their lowest scoring games of the year when they played them early in the year. They lost by 10. But, Spencer, we've seen a lot of ups and downs. What can this team do to secure this very, very important win over Geneva this Wednesday?
Yeah, look, guys, the first game against Geneva wasn't really pretty. I mean, it was a very defensive game. There was no offense really for either team. Trevor Tipton didn't even play well. Anton Baker really didn't play well. None of the guys on either team played well. And now you're going into Geneva at their place. And like I said, I've been mentioning it for the past week before the W&J game. You had to pick up at least W&J, St. Vincent, or Geneva. You drop WJ, but you pick up St. Vincent. So you're in a good spot. It would be very, very nice for us guys who want that home playoff game or just a playoff run in general if we can pick up that Geneva game. It's going to have to be Jordan McCloy. You have Jansen Knotts. He had that coming out game. If he can play like that again, great. But Jordan McCoy, we've seen him do it against McDaniels at the start of the year. Then that big game against W&J. If we can get that Jordan McCoy we saw against W&J, both really games he played well, I think Waynesburg has a very, very solid chance of beating this Geneva team.
I think the best part about this Waynesburg team heading down this later stretch in the season is that the teams we are playing now did not see Jalen Davis as much. He had just 12 points last time, or rather 12 minutes, I should say, last time they played Geneva. How important is that the team hasn't, obviously they can check on tape, see what he's made of, but how important is it that they have not actually experienced Jalen Davis as a starter in game?
Well, credit to Fusina. I mean, we rag on him all the time for not really rotating many guys. And this year he has done an excellent job of throwing multiple guys. And we've seen 9, 10, even up to 11 guys in per game. And Jalen Davis's insertion into this lineup has been huge. You get a rebounder who you had with Baker. You get a shot blocker in the 6'7" junior. And you get an offensive guy who is a beast down low. And all that combined gives Anton Baker rest time, because before Davis was really inserted into this lineup as much as he has been, Baker's been playing 30, 35 minutes. And again, we can see it. His body's going to give out eventually if you keep playing that much. Davis comes on, you give Baker a rest. He gives you that down low presence that every team needs. He's one of your true centers, somewhat to what Najon Kirkman was a few years ago for Waynesburg. But Davis, these teams are obviously going to watch film, but you really don't experience it until you're playing against it. And I think W&J was a little shocked that second time he played them. He had 7 right off the bat, 2 easy and 1s down low. He was a beast down low to start that game.
So we talked about the inconsistency, all that jazz, if you want to say. What is one thing that you really want Waynesburg to focus on and fix by the end of this season before like the playoffs come around the corner and they're still missing this one piece? What do you think that is?
Well, there's the saying, you live and die by the three, and while I would love if we had a shooter like Clay or a shooter like Steph on this team, there quite frankly just isn't one. And basketball is a game of runs. Sometimes you can go on runs with just 2-point field goals made against St. Vincent. They only had one. Now Vincent only had two, but there's no secret that there's not a shooter on this team. We know McCoy can shoot. We know Jake Scheidt can shoot. We know Corey Easton can shoot. We don't see him a lot. But there's not a guy who can come off a screen, hit a moving three. Well, there's not someone on that team who can do this. Now, you don't necessarily need one, but I think a key point to this team is, can you hit your three balls when they're open? We've seen a lot of Jake Scheidt wide open threes. We've seen a lot of Jordan McCloyd wide open threes. We've seen these guys get open, but they're not falling. I think late in the season, you've had time to get going. You've had a lot of time to practice. I think if the threes start dropping more consistently for these guys, they're going to have a way better chance in the late run and in the playoffs.
Well, Spencer, thank you very much for joining us this episode to talk about that men's basketball team. They also will have a game against Allegheny on Saturday, following the Geneva game on Wednesday. But that's going to do it for us here at Jacket Sports Weekly. Thank you, everybody behind the scenes and all the analysts that came up on the desk with Seth and I. Everybody watching, have a great night.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.